OBS doesn't like to cooperate, so let's try to make this quick. So, event editing. Every square in the top left, for the most part, is going to be an autorun event. Autorun is just telling it, hey, as soon as this map pops up, start this event. So when this map loads, chapter 1, which is going to be the very first map, show picture 1. Show picture, chapter 1, and this is all going to be in the pictures folder. So anytime we do a show picture script, it's pulling from that pictures folder right here. So show picture 1 is the chapter 1, those who lurk in the night background. I then want to wait 180 frames, which is going to be 3 seconds, because this game is going to run at 60 frames a second, so 60 times 3, 180. So after 3 seconds, that gives the player plenty of time to read it. The screen's going to fade out. We're going to erase this picture that we just showed, and we're going to transfer the player to Sector 8 Night. We'll go there in a second. Let's notice this. Control Self Switch A is on. So the way that the game reads events is right to left. So let's just keep adding event pages here. So if we have 7 event pages, for whatever reason, it's going to check this one first, and it's going to check these variables. So if switch 148 is on, it's going to run this, it's going to ignore everything else. However, we don't have that many, so let's look at it. We've only got 2. At the end of this event, we turn self switch A on, so since it's reading right to left. If self switch A is on, do nothing. Since self switch A in the very beginning of the game was not on, it skips this and runs this. So transfer player to the Sector 8 Night at location 57. If we check this by editing, we can click on here and we can see it's going to transfer to this map. You can pick which map you want to go to, and you can pick where within the map. So I put it right here, right there just below this door. So let's go to that map real quick, and we're going to set her starting position to here. What this does is, if I want to check this map without going through this beginning and displaying all this, I can then play the game and it will come right here. The only issue is some of those switches aren't going to be on. So this switch that we set to on here is no longer on because it was never set. There's also going to be, these are going to be different autorun events up here. They're going to have completely different switches. So let's look at these real quick. So you'll see at the bottom, self switch A is on. Self switch A is on. However, it also has this switch here. So self switches work within the map, but once we leave the map and come back, they're no longer set. So as long as we stay in this map, this is going to stop the event from auto running. So at the very bottom, self switch A is on. That says, hey, don't do anything. So when this sets it, way down here, this event is never going to run. This script or in the contents is not going to run anymore. Let's look again right here. So once switch 5 is set, which is a completely separate switch we've set somewhere, I bet if we look here, we'll see, well, that's going to be switch 6. It still works, but if this said switch 5, this would basically say, hey, if switch 5 is on, which we know it has been activated over here because it's stopping this event, now it's okay to do this. So if we change this to 5, it would actually still work. But this is basically, hey, we've left the screen, we've come back to the screen. That's what these different auto-run events are for. So that's one way to do it, is set multiple auto-run events with different switches. The other way is to just copy this and add it multiple times. So we would go here, we'd come here, we'd go here, and then we're coming back to this place, but instead of doing it up here, we could just add it under here again. We could make another new one, name it whatever, and it would then go to this one next if we transferred to it. And we wouldn't have to worry about what switches are on, what switches are off. That's just how I did it in the very beginning. Going forward, we could do it the other way. It doesn't take up any more space or anything like that. It might actually be a little easier to follow. So that's what the auto run events are do. I don't know if I went over it, but that's how you can tell right here. This trigger down here, auto run. So as soon as the map's loaded, it runs it. The other events, let's go to here, for example. So you remember the player comes in and talks to Sung. Then once you walk over this tile, it's triggered. That's because it's a player touch tile. So when the player touches it, it means to run this event. At the very end, you'll see that control switch 3 is now turned on. So in here, when control switch 3 is turned on, that means erase the event. So these will disappear. That means if you walk over them again, so you'll notice this one is going to be control switch 3. all of them will be. So no matter which one you touch, all three will get erased. Then you'll fight these guys, and you end up running over here. This is going to be another transfer. So when the player touches this one, just like the other one, we're going to fade the screen out. We're going to change the player's transparency to on, and we're going to transfer to headquarters 86. And again, we can just look at it real quick. That's going to put us right in the middle. That way when the screen appears, we can see it'll display properly. If we went up here, we would only be able to see probably like half of it, something like that. So if we go to headquarters, you're going to see more of those same events where different switches are on. So once switch 11 comes on, don't run this one anymore. Same thing with all these. If switch 11 is on, okay, run this one. But if switch 12 is on, don't. This will probably say 12 or later, so 12 is on, great. Oh, but if 23 is on, don't run it. So that's how all those are going to work. Within those, we can just look at this as an example. To show the picture, everything is going to be done within the screen. So if you hit enter or you right click new, that will pull this up. This is how everything's done. This is where your weights are. This is where you transfer your player to a different screen. This is where you can set your movements. This is where you can scroll the maps, play sound effects, play background musics. Everything's going to be done over here. There's also the script command. These are going to be extra things that the plugins we've added can do. So if you'll notice in the movements, let's go back to a different one real quick where they are moving some. Where everyone's moved, let's go one more, because I know these guys have it. With movements, we also have those Q moves that we talked about with the Q plugin a little bit. So you'd have to actually add a script within this movement route to do a Q move. So if I wanted them to move like it says here, Q move 424, then turn down. If I wanted them to move again, say I wanted to move up, I'd have to do a Q move, 8, and if I wanted to go half a tile, we'd go 24, and I'd set that. So then this guy would move up a little bit. Within those movements, you also notice that sometimes there are weights added. Here's a good example up here. We tinted the screen and we added a weight to it. Or we untinted the screen, because if you remember that previous map, we tinted it. So we untinted the screen and we said wait. So this is saying don't run anything else until this is finishing executing. Same thing, we could put it here. So move the player at this speed, move it down this many tiles, but don't do anything until this is completed. That being said, some of these things do take time, so it's not going to run this instantaneously and just go to the next one. It doesn't take milliseconds. It does take a little bit of time for it to read everything and then go to the next thing. So there is a little bit of time included within all these movements. So you do kind of have to play test and see are things moving when they're supposed to. You will also notice a lot of these guys look weird. You just see like an arm. That's because these animations will only play correctly if this tile is picked. So all the enemies and the people we encounter, like Reno and whoever else, they're all just going to look like an arm. Otherwise, the script won't play correctly. So it is kind of difficult to tell. You'll also notice that some of these will be invisible. So let's go to, I think, the reactor entrance. So you see this, just invisible, like this, but it's not an autorun event. It's actually another guy. It's this guy. It's an avalanche member coming in later. So this kind of coincides to how you want them to appear. So if you click up here, when they appear, they're going to be facing down. If you click up here, they're going to be facing up. It doesn't necessarily matter. You can turn their transparency off and on when you need to, but that's why all of these look so strange. It's just the way the game works. So this guy's invisible because in this autorun event, we come here and something happens, and then we have a different autorun event. So this event runs where we just see them. It goes to headquarters. They talk a little bit. Then we come back here. When we're coming back here, headquarters had turned a switch on. Switch 13, we'll say. So when switch 13 is on and activated, it's also telling this event, okay, now you can actually display this character. Because in that previous event, we wanted him invisible. We didn't need to see him. We just needed to see whichever guys were there at that time. So that's why there's going to be these different tabs that have different things. So these guys are going to come up. They're going to attack. We're going to run through another event where it says, okay, these guys are dead. We don't want to see them anymore. This says, hey, if switch 14 is on, where these guys, they avalanche attacked, make it invisible again. The other way to do that is you can actually erase the event from within here, and that way you can actually walk through them. So that would actually probably be a better way to do this in case you did want to move around within the screen and walk around and do things, just to remove the event completely. That way you don't accidentally touch them, something like that. So So that's going to be the movement, the scrolling. Let's get out of here. The different events, the sound effects, all of that is going to be within here. Here's the different, like, you can add a weight, you fade in the screen. You generally want to fade out the screen, do a bunch of stuff, do the things you want to do, like scroll the map certain places, then fade the screen back in so everything is going to appear as you wanted it to. That's a very basic example of how things are done. Hopefully that's helpful. Give me a like and subscribe.